Feel your best and amplify your everyday look with Thrive Cosmetics. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/shine26 for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/shine26.
Hello, and welcome to Unbox with Sahar. Today, we're going to talk about logic and intuition, and why you need both. This is one of the questions that I have been asked, whether people should trust logic or intuition. It is an interesting question because it assumes that both of them are in competition with each other, which is not true. It suggests that we should choose one or the other. However, they both belong to the same world. Yet, when I look back over my life and more than 30 years of mentoring and working with people, I cannot think of how many important decisions were made using only one. The decision that shapes our lives rarely arrives with complete certainty. Whether we're choosing a career, starting a business, entering a relationship, moving countries, writing a book, navigating major life transitions, there's usually an element of the unknown. We gather information, logically, we seek advice, we weigh up possibilities, and then try to make sense of what lies ahead. Yet even after we've done all of that, there is often something else that is present in the process. A feeling, an observation, a hesitation, a quiet moment where we feel we need to consider something. For many years, I have been focused on the relationship between logic and intuition. With time, I've come to see them as partners. The more I have observed people, the more I have come to believe that many difficulties arise when we place trust in one but ignore the other. My own life has taken me through both worlds. Let me say briefly that I have experienced both worlds. I studied civil engineering, a discipline that values evidence, analysis, structure, problem solving. And later, I worked in advertising and marketing, where creativity was in demand, human behavior and communication played a much larger role. Eventually, my path led me towards mentoring and exploring these questions to do with awareness, growth, intuition, and the human experience, really, because we're multidimensional. Each of these worlds seem to emphasize a different way of understanding the same reality. Some value data, some value analysis, others relied heavily on instinct and heavy observation. Yet life itself seems to fit neatly in either category. Some of the most important decisions I have made have been solved through logic alone. Logic helped me understand the options. It helped me evaluate the risks, the opportunities. It helped me organize information. What it couldn't do was to tell me which path was ultimately more meaningful. Yet, when I was offered two career paths at the same time at the beginning of my working life, I laid all the facts, but I asked a dream to guide me. And over the years, I've met so many people who were exceptionally intelligent. They would analyze the situation from every possible angle. They could identify the risks. They created plans. They built impressive strategies. Yet, despite all of that, they found themselves stuck. They had gathered so much information that making a decision became increasingly difficult. I sometimes think it's like living in the waiting room of certainty. People convince themselves that they simply need a little bit more time, a little bit more information before they move forward. Another course, another conversation, another opinion, or yet another year to think about it. The difficulty is that life rarely provides complete certainty. There comes a point where no amount of information can eliminate uncertainty entirely. Logic is an extraordinary tool. It helps us organize information, identify patterns, assess consequences, and make informed decisions. But without logic, we could struggle to navigate everyday life. It protects us from impulsive decisions. It encourages us to think carefully about what choices we make. However, logic has its limitations. It can only work with information that is available at the time. If important information is missing, logic cannot help you arrive at a conclusion. It will be based on an incomplete picture. This is why so many people get stuck, because they discover that they're overlooking something important. This brings us to intuition. Over the years, I became so interested in the subject that I eventually wrote many books about it. Check my books page on the website. What fascinated me was not the extraordinary experience that people often associated with intuition. What fascinated me was how frequently ordinary people ignored information that was readily available. One of the greatest misconceptions about intuition is that it arrives dramatically, like you should see visions or whatever. I didn't have any of that. People often expect intuition to appear with certainty, a revelation, some kind of unmistakable sign. In my experience, intuition was much quieter than that. It arrived like a whisper, like a feeling that insisting feeling that deserves more attention. It may be a sense that a particular opportunity is not quite right. It may be a recurring thought that refuses to disappear. It doesn't possess you, but it's there and you can't ignore it. It may be a feeling of ease, where you feel comfortable for no logical reason. What is interesting is that intuition rarely explains itself. But I would say this: it is a feeling that you cannot ignore, not an emotion. It doesn't provide detailed step by step analysis, it's simply information or a feeling. This is one reason that people often struggle with intuition. They want it to behave like logic, but it doesn't because it complements it. They want evidence, certainty, guarantees. Intuition has or offers none of these. Instead, it invites you to pay attention. What are you feeling? One of the questions I'm often asked is, how do you distinguish between intuition, fear, and wishful thinking? This is an important question because often people confuse the two. Fear tends to create urgency. It generates drama, stories about what might happen. It imagines the worst case scenario, and it encourages us to seek immediate certainty. Intuition is usually quieter. It may draw attention to something, but it rarely demands immediate action. And this is an important difference. It simply asks you to notice. And once you notice something, you cannot ignore it. It doesn't repeat itself in a loop like an obsessive thought, like fear does, or anxiety. This is where self-awareness becomes essential. The more familiar you become with your pattern of beliefs and assumptions, the easier it will become to recognize what belongs to fear, what belongs to anxiety, what belongs to intuition. This is one of the reasons I developed the 4 dimensions of change, what I call the BEMA methodology, because I recognize that we are multi-dimensional beings, we sense in multiple ways, and all of that needs to be integrated into who we are. People often think that only through thinking they can solve problems. But the body influences how we experience a situation, because all of your body has sensory cells that send messages to the brain. So you can't ignore how your body feels. Our beliefs influence what we think is possible. So if you're not able to control your emotions, they will dictate or take you down a different path. With these dimensions, when these dimensions are out of alignment, decision-making becomes very difficult and very confusing, the reason why people get stuck. We may think we want something emotionally, but we actually fear it. We may feel inspired by a possibility, but we hold the belief that this is a coincidence. We may understand exactly what needs to be done, but we avoid the action to get it done in order to move forward. Self-awareness helps you recognize this internal dynamic that is going on, and maybe you have not been paying attention. The clearer you become about your inner world, the clearer you become, or better, at using both logic and intuition. Over the years, I've also noticed that people ask the wrong question. They ask, should I trust logic or intuition? I would suggest a different question. What information is available to you now? If you ask yourself that, what is available to me now? What am I not noticing that I haven't fully explored? The first question is about logic. The second question is about intuition. It's about starting a conversation with yourself in your mind. The three questions together create a much richer picture. How do you feel in your body? How does this center feel? Because for most people, this is what's most sensitive. It's like walking into a property. You either feel or you feel, ew, this place is not for me. I talk about my personal experiences in Diary of a Life Mentor on Facebook, but I will soon have it on my blog because I wanted to show you what it is to have awareness and how to apply it in daily life, how to contain unexpected events, how does it look like when you overlook these intuitive input, this intuitive data, if you like. So logic helps you to find information. Intuition helps you to notice and gives you value. Neither compete with each other. If you like, it's the yin and the yang. They need to work together to form a whole, W-H-O-L, holistic picture. I have come to observe that there is no wisdom in choosing either or, but there is all the wisdom that there is when you combine both. You can learn from both. Logic helps you to understand what you know. Intuition helps you to recognize what you may not fully understand, because you will always have this feeling something is not quite right, or although logically, factually, I shouldn't do this, but I feel quite comfortable to do it. So the goal is not to become more logical or intuitive. A lot of my students and clients say, but I don't see anything. It's not about having a phenomena. It's about being an objective observer, if you like, a neutral observer, and to become aware that you may sense things, although you may not touch them. You could feel things, although you may not see anything, that sort of thing. So if you imagine we have 5 senses, use your internal 5 senses to pick up information. You know the time when you're sitting at a cafe and you're busy looking at a magazine or reading, but you sense somebody behind is staring at you, and then you turn around and they are. That is intuition, because you're picking it up with every cell in your body. We are made that way. We are programmed that way. And as you will know, if you're new here, I'm really passionate about demystifying the enigmatic. So don't ignore gifts that you already have. And if you have been ignoring your inner gifts, check out in the playlist Unbox Academy on YouTube, and you will have, what shall I call them, a series of seminars, webinars. It's actually a course, and it's called Your Inner Gifts, and it tells you exactly how to unfold these gifts that you already have within you. Thank you for joining me on Unbox with Sahar today, and I'll see you next week.